Hi, welcome to Matters of the Heart and Soul. I'm your host, Janie Charlo. Matters of the Heart and Soul is a podcast to raise awareness and awaken humanity to all that is within. We want to be a beacon of light on your life journey. Hi, welcome to Matters of the Heart and Soul podcast. I am your host, Janie Charlo, and I'm co-hosting with Mr. Russell Bruce.
Hello, everyone.
All right, so in today's podcast, we are talking with Miss Tammy Rowe. Tammy is a registered nurse who was recently assigned. She had a COVID-19 assignment in New Jersey. She was actually in Englewood, New Jersey, and she was at the Englewood Medical Center. And so we wanted Tammy to come on just as being a frontline worker, just to kind of give some eyewitness account to some of the things that we've actually been hearing on the news and a lot of things that's been circulating. So we just kind of wanted to talk to her. So welcome to this show, Tammy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate it.
Awesome. So Tammy has been a healthcare provider, in the healthcare field for over 19 years. She has a master's degree. She has some background in med surg, telemetry, also nursing education, and she is an owner of a small home health business. So Tammy, I appreciate you just taking this time out to talk to us. So just can you kind of start off and tell us about your assignment in New Jersey and just what that environment was like at the Englewood Medical Center?
Sure. The assignment was it was a short assignment. It was for 6 weeks. It was just due to the COVID crisis, the staffing crisis that was all happening with this whole COVID thing that was going on. It was my first day was very intense. It was very different. Other healthcare providers and other frontliners can probably relate to, what I'm saying, but I just wish I could find the right words to describe it. But it was just very different. You were on your toes, kind of like your entire shift. You just couldn't plan your day. You didn't know what was going to happen. There were a ton of like rapid response and code blues. My medical, professionals, they understand some of that lingo. But there was just a lot going on, and it was just unbelievable. It was just unbelievable. And it was very intense. It was a very intense environment, but also it was just also more mentally exhausting than physical.
Okay. Well. So as far as your assignment, you were assigned on a medical telemetry floor at that.
Okay. Yes, correct.
What was your patient load like?
It would vary, depending on what unit I floated on. They had multiple units, but it would average. My first day was about maybe 6 patients. And I think that the nurses kind of came forward and started speaking up and saying, hey, this is too much to have this amount of patients with everyone having these respiratory issues. And we're calling codes and rapid responses so much. So after about this, maybe a week and a half, the hospital kind of rearranged some of the staffing. So we were averaging around 3 to 4 patients instead of having your average 6 patient load during the day.
Okay. And from my understanding, the entire hospital was the COVID hospital, right? Like everything was COVID patients.
Yes, okay. Correct.
So tell me a little bit about if your day you went in and you had about 4 patients that day. Was all 4 of your patients COVID positive? And kind of walk us through your day. And you don't have to be complete, because I know your days are long. I know what that is. But I want really you to just kind of paint the picture of your patients that were COVID positive, what caused you to call the rapid response team and stuff like that. Like, were they just not able to breathe? Just anything, just so that you can paint the picture.
Yeah. Okay. To paint the picture, each of my COVID patients, they all displayed just differently in their own way. But they all did have one thing in common, where they were struggling to breathe. We had patients who did have more comorbidities. Maybe they may have had hypertension. They may have been like a smoker or other issues, other health issues. And those patients did seem to struggle a little bit more um, than some of the patients who had no kind of health issues prior to COVID. Um, with that being said, you were just kind of running up and down the halls all day. There was really no time to kind of sit and relax and kind of have that moment where you can kind of chart and kind of gather your thoughts for the day, because as soon as you would leave out of one room, you would have another call bell ringing and the patients are just scared. They're saying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And a lot of times too, even though they were on oxygen and, had everything that they needed, I think it was more so anxiety, because when we would check O2 saturations, they would be in the like 94, 95, but they weren't able to take those real big deep breaths because their lungs were filled up with fluid, of course. So it felt like they were kind of breathing at a fast pace, like they had been running like long laps. But they were breathing, but I think mentally, because they couldn't take those big, those good deep breaths, that they felt like they couldn't breathe. So it was a mixture of a little anxiety, and then you had those patients who would just, their saturations would drop in the 50s, and you would have to hurry up and like put them on a non-rebreather mask and turn the oxygen up to 15 liters, and kind of get them to lay on their bellies so that their lungs could expand, and we would change the bed position and just try to get their O2 saturations to come up. Some of those patients, they did respond well to that, and some of them didn't, which was the next step of calling in the ICU, calling the rapid response, letting them determine if the patient needs to be intubated or sent to ICU and things of that nature. So they were all different in their own way, but they all dealt with the same thing, which was with the struggling of breathing.
And then the patients that decline rapidly and the decision was to go to ICU or to be intubated, do you feel like they knew what they were consenting to? Do you feel like a lot of them didn't want to be intubated? And what did you see with the ventilators as far as them getting intubated? Did some of them come off the vent? Did most of them not come off the vent?
So to answer the first question, as far as the consent, I'm pretty sure walking into the hospital or coming in, you're saying, oh, I don't want to be intubated. But when you're in that situation where you can't breathe, your mind kind of goes to do whatever you have to do to save me. So I had not seen a patient absolutely say, no, I don't want to be, I don't want to be intubated. There was no one ever. If they knew what they were consenting to, I really highly doubt it, because in an emergent situation, you don't have time to say, okay, this is what's going to happen to you. You can't breathe. So it's more, let's get this patient, intubated. And then it's kind of after the fact, they kind of maybe, know what's going on. As far as patients coming off of the ventilator, I have seen a few that have been extubated. They end up staying in the hospital a little longer. After they're extubated, they come back up to the med-surg floor or the telemetry floor, whichever, if they have cardiac issues or not, that all determines which floor they return to. But they do well, and some of them don't do so well because they suffer what is it? What's the proper name for it? I'm sorry, but when you go with oxygen, with no oxygen to the brain for quite some time, they all suffer like that brain injury from lack of oxygen. So some of them just mentally weren't there anymore.
Wow.
Because of the state, because of the state that they were in. They may not have been intubated soon enough, or things like that. So it's been an array of different situations. Like I said, no situation was actually identical, except for the fact that everyone just displayed that situation with the trouble of breathing. That's the only thing that was in common. Everyone's story was completely different. And it was just amazing. It just amazed me with the COVID. And I think that's what left a lot of people on their toes, because they don't know, like diabetes, it affects you. You have high blood sugar, you have low blood sugar. It's kind of somewhat similar with everyone, but COVID is different with everybody.
As far as COVID-19, the virus itself, do you feel like this wasn't a natural virus, and that we just were not prepared? Do you feel like this was something manipulated somehow, because we've heard those stories about it, being in the lab and stuff like that, and then What are your feelings and thoughts about that from seeing patients firsthand?
From seeing patients firsthand, I really honestly feel like this is something um that was manipulated or created. The only reason I say that is because I mean just of what it does to the body.
Right.
The human body is very unique, and with any like the common cold or just regular things that us as growing up with children, we got all types of little germs and stuff, and our bodies found a way to kind of heal itself or whatever the case may be. But this particular one, it with the way that it sends your body into that cytokine storm where your body starts to just overly respond
Hmm.
to it. It just makes me feel that, this is something that's just way out of the norm. And I feel that it had to be created to do bodily harm to someone
Yeah.
with the intent to do bodily harm.
Yeah.
Yes.
And let's talk about the management. We've heard a lot about hydrochloroquine being a treatment. We've heard our president say that. What was the treatment like in the hospital that you were in? I know you said mostly positioning, prone positioning.
Mhm.
What was the medical treatment like? Which I know, if the lungs are filling up, you think it's pneumonia. They're probably giving them some IV antibiotics. Can you just kind of walk us through that a little bit of what you've seen?
Yes, it was a lot of when like my first couple of weeks there was a ton of the hydrochloroquine and the azithromycin.
Okay.
That was pretty much all that we saw for the first few weeks. And then for the coughing, they would give them like the Teflon
Okay.
pearls to help with the cough. But everybody's treatment was the same up until 2 weeks prior to like the ending of my assignment. I saw where the hydrochloroquine was kind of like out of the window. And then when I started looking at the news, I saw that they were no longer wanting to use that. They were kind of going to go another route with other drugs and things. So I think they were following suit with what the government was recommending. And then they kind of shifted out once they said, hey, we're no longer gonna, want to use
Were
this
they
or
getting on the
whatever. But
with the Z pack and the hydrochloroquine and just what you were able to assess?
uh, no, I would actually say
Okay.
no. It seemed like it wasn't doing anything. It wasn't doing anything for them. I didn't see where, the patients would, see a little bit different. They would still, just lie there like they're just completely
Mm.
miserable, even with the medication. Yes.
Yeah. Tell me about the PPE situation because that was the other big thing. Because we've had a lot of
Yeah.
healthcare systems, a lot of furloughs, a lot of nurses that were laid off for whatever reason. But locally, I know some people that were laid off because they wanted to reserve the PPE for the hospitals. So like their sister offices, like maybe the family offices or like the urgent care, stuff like that. A lot of the providers and nurses were furloughed and laid off. So did you guys have a PPE shortage where you were in New Jersey?
There wasn't that I'm aware of, there wasn't a PPE shortage. There were, we pretty much had masks. We did have to use the one mask, for the entire shift though. We couldn't change our mask out. We had to sign it out. We had to use them, for the entire shift unless they became wet or soiled of some sort. They had gowns. They had like the disposable gowns in the very beginning, but once it got to like the mid part of the week, you would see or not the mid part of the week, the mid part of my assignment, I'm sorry, you would see where they were having those, like the washable
Mhm.
gowns that you would just have to put on and go in the room. You would take them off, and instead of discarding them in the trash, they would go in like the linen bin to be washed and recycled. So I don't know if that was just a shortage or if that was them kind of reserving. And then also they had sent out like a memo saying that they were going to start sterilizing the medium size um, N95 mask. And they did like some type of process of sterilization, which I've never heard of. I don't think even in healthcare that was never even, I've never heard of them sterilizing, but they came up with this thing where they were sterilizing them. Luckily, I didn't wear a medium, so I didn't have to wear it, thank God. But they had nurses that were wearing the recyclable, the ones that had been sterilized. So
Yeah.
again, that's, yeah.
And so, like, being a nurse, I mean, how was that doing your job, taking care of patients, keeping your N95 mask on for, 3-4 days, and, double gloving and maybe washing the gloves, putting them back on. I don't know. I've heard a lot of different things. So how is that? And how do you feel like that affected the care for these COVID patients?
Um, it it affected the care. How can I say it affected the care? It's just there was no
Yeah.
standards with this whole PPE thing. I mean, people were just kind of making up stuff as they were going along. I saw nurses that would wear a pair of gloves, and then they would kind of double glove. And when they come out of the patient's room, they would remove the first layer of gloves, and then they would sanitize the gloves that are on like the bottom layer, and then they would just put on another pair of gloves on top of the ones that they just sanitized. I had never in my career have seen that, but people were just making up stuff. And it wasn't just the nurses, it was nurses and doctors. They were making up stuff as they go, because no one really knew what to expect. Wearing the mask all day long was very rough. As well, because if you're running in a room and you're helping a patient and everybody's moving and you're trying to get things situated, it's like really kind of hard to breathe, and you start to feel like you're almost suffocating because you're not getting the fresh air. It's like you're just breathing in recycled your own recycled air. It's like you're suffocating almost. So we took like frequent breaks just to kind of go in the break room and just to remove the mask, just to take a deep breath and try to get a sip of water in if whenever we could. We just made the
Yeah.
best out of it. It was very different. It's very different, but definitely you have to make the best out of it.
So, did you see any of the medical staff that actually contracted the virus as a result?
The ones that I didn't know, we had a time where they had offered everyone to have the antibody testing, and a lot of the regular staff that were actual staff, not agency, but staff at that hospital, a lot of them came back positive. And just listening to conversations that they had, they were saying that before everything kind of took over, before the news kind of took over everything, they were getting these patients with these symptoms and they didn't know. So they didn't have protection. They were just going in the room, taking care of the patient. And then like a couple of days later, they noticed like one nurse will get sick and then the other nurse will get sick. And then when they kind of did some tracing, those nurses took care of like the same patient. And then another scenario was with the rapid testing. There were a ton of false negatives with the rapid testing. And so what was happening with that, they would do the rapid testing, the testing will come back and say that they're negative. The patient will be actually positive, and the patient will go up to a floor and the nurses would take care of them without the mask and the proper PPE. And a lot of nurses were contracting it that way as well. So now it's like if they have a false negative test, then we would still treat them, as if they have it, because those tests don't always come back. The results are not always accurate.
Yeah.
So another question in reference to the testing, I'm not sure how much involved you were in the testing, but in some of the documentation that I read, it stated that the patient tested positive for COVID SARS-2 that leads to COVID-19.
Yeah, I heard a little bit about that as well. But I'm not too involved in testing, so I don't really have a lot of information on that.
Can you explain, just for our listeners, the difference between the rapid testing and the antibody testing? And then why would you want to know
Yes.
either?
Okay, well, the rapid testing is just like you get a quicker response. I'm not sure all of the procedures on how it's done, but it's a regular COVID test, but you're supposed to get the results back in like a 24 to 48-hour time frame, versus the regular test can take about 5 days. So I'm not sure as to why those tests were coming up, saying, the patients were negative when they were actually positive. I don't know the link between that, but I do know that, that was a result of the testing not being accurate. And as far as the antibody testing will just show, it's a blood, they draw blood, and it shows if your body has built any immunity to COVID-19. So the antibody testing is pretty accurate, but it's only really accurate after you've had
Right.
COVID-19. So if your test come back positive, and I heard a lot of nurses say, I felt sick, but I didn't have all of the, the symptoms. I had just the lack of taste, and my ears had pressure in them, but I felt fine. And they had the antibody test, and they have antibodies for COVID. So they had they were exposed. So I heard a lot of that too. So those nurses were still like coming to work because they didn't feel that bad, because these nurses had to keep their benefits. They had to keep, they still had to continue to work in order to keep everything that they've, gained in that hospital. So they were coming to work too. And now that the antibody test is here, they all say, like a couple of them were like, I thought that I had it. I just wasn't sure. And I'm like, what? How could you not, but it affects everyone differently. So
Yeah.
it's it's a big mess.
Tell us a little bit
sure.
about like the number of cases your hospital's seen there.
The number of cases, I stopped keeping track because it was so many. But the entire hospital, I think the hospital has about over 1,000 beds, and each bed they were at a full capacity. And they have they still in New Jersey, which is a lot different from Georgia, but they still have 2 patients to a room. I haven't seen 2 patients to a room in a long time, just due to like the HIPAA and all of that stuff. But they still have 2 patients to each room. And they have like, they can house over 1,000 patients. It's a pretty big hospital. And they were all like filled to the max. They had some patients that were being discharged to what do you call that? The hospitals that like the military had set up, like the camp, like almost like the tents and stuff that they had. They had some patients that if they met certain criteria and they were COVID positive, they would transfer them out to that hospital to make room for other patients.
Can you shed some light on like what we
bad.
were seeing in the media with everything that was going on in New York? And I know you were in New Jersey, but can you shed any light on that? Like, we were seeing it was like all these bodies and all this stuff. Do you feel like that was accurate, what the media was showing?
Yeah. Yes, it was very accurate. I have a couple of my colleagues that are in New York, and they would send me pictures and stuff because I was asking the same questions. But yes, the morgue was just at its capacity. So they had the refrigerated trailers that served as the morgue. So they would, put the bodies in the refrigerated trailers until the funeral homes had room for them, because the funeral homes didn't have enough room. They had funerals that were literally pushed, like they were on waiting lists, and they were pushed, months out, even, still now, because the funeral homes were saying with the news, like the local news was like, they were interviewing the funeral home directors, and they were saying they would go from about 2 to 3, maybe funerals a week, to now they're at like, they do like 2 a day. So they're at like 14, between 12 and 14 funerals, per day. And that they just said they're at their capacity. And so that's why, they have nowhere to put these bodies. So they have the trucks, and she showed me like pictures of it. It's real. It's so sad.
Yeah. And like, family can't come in, so patients are dying alone. What was that like as a nurse, seeing that and managing that?
That was like one of the toughest parts, because being a nurse, I'm just used to like getting my patients better, motivating them better. Go home case, and you would have patients like die every day. We started counting like how many patients will not die Like that was like a goal of how many would get to go home for the day. Because so many people, they were just dying, like back to back to back to back. I have never in my life, in my career of nursing, seen anything like it. That was the hardest part, because you felt kind of like hopeless. The family members were calling so much that they actually had to stop the family members from calling the nurses, because one nurse was on the phone with the family member and she had another patient that was literally actively dying, but the family member was like irate and she couldn't hang up on the phone. The other nurse had to call a response, but it was all delayed because the nurse was on the phone with another family member. So when that happened and that patient died, they made it so that the families could no longer call the nurses and distract the nurses on the unit. The doctors would align, the phone call with one family member to be a representative for the entire family, because you had the mama, auntie, cousin, brother. I mean, and they were all like all day long, just calling. The nurses couldn't get their work done.
Yeah.
So it became like overwhelming in a lot of different aspects. But they did come up with they brought iPads to each unit, and the families could call and schedule a time to like FaceTime their family member. If they didn't already have an iPhone, they would FaceTime them, and make that time with all the family members there to kind of talk to them and stuff, so that they wouldn't feel alone. But that was at Englewood. I'm not sure if that was at all hospitals, but I just know for Englewood, that was one of the things that they did for the patients.
Wow.
What was your assessment as far as the age that this virus was really more prevalent in? Like, was it elderly? What was the youngest COVID patient you seen, including a COVID death?
Okay, the youngest COVID patient that I had was 28-year-old. The oldest, the most that I did see, to be honest with you, was between 50-ish and 70-ish. That was a lot of what I saw, and it was a lot of husband and wife, or a lot of people that were in the household together, mother, daughter. You would see the mom come first, and then you would see like a couple of days later, the daughter would be admitted. Things like that. It was a lot of family admissions going on. But I would say the youngest was like 28. My oldest patient was about 89. That was the oldest, but average, it was like mostly was between the 50s and like early 70s.
Okay.
Another question, if you were to contract COVID-19, say you test positive, what treatment would you want to receive?
It's a great question, and that's a question that I don't have an answer to, because everyone is just different. Everybody's body is different. I may not need the aggressive treatment like someone else, but if my case were that bad, I would. I don't. I don't know. It's hard to say. That's a hard question to answer. I just would want to receive great nursing care, and just give me a iPhone with some FaceTime where I can talk to my family, But as far as what medicine would I take, or what would I do, that's just a question I really don't have an answer for, because I really don't know. Because and no, I don't think anyone really knows. They're still even trying to figure it out. When I say they, meaning like the government and all the higher ups, and some of the pharmaceutical companies, they're still trying to figure out. I want this and that. I really don't know. I really can't say that I would say that. Just keep me alive. Is the best way you can. That would be my answer for right now.
Wow. Tammy, were you scared at any moment? Were you scared? Like, am I going to leave this assignment? Why did I sign up for this? Why did I do this? At any moment, were you scared?
I was scared. Unit, and my patient was completely blue. O2 saturations were 54, and he was intubated like right at the bedside. I felt like a new nurse, like I didn't know anything, because it was just shocking to see someone go, that fast on a unit. When it gets that fast, you're normally like in an ICU type of setting where you have everything you need, you can kind of help. But the doctors came in, they kind of did everything, and all I could do was just stand there. They had everything they needed, but I felt helpless. I did feel a little scared, because that was when I think the reality check was, okay, this is no joke. And then the next day I went to work, I started seeing the same thing. And then the next day and the next day was all the same thing. Code blue, code blue, code blue. There were so many code blues and rapid responses. It was insane. So I was absolutely scared. I think I cried like my first week. I was like, I want to go home. But, I prayed about it, and I'm like, maybe I'm here for, a bigger purpose. And, so I tried to leaned on my faith a lot, and I just kind of did what I felt was right. But I wanted to come home. I wanted to come home like the first week. I'm like, I can't. But I had to think about it. I'm a nurse. So whether I nurse here or if I go back to Georgia, COVID is here. So there's no running from it with this line of work that I do. So do I just stay here and, make it work? Or do I just go back home and deal with the same thing? So I just decided to stay there and rough it out, leaned on my faith a lot, like I said, and I got through, and my antibody test was negative prior to coming home. So I wasn't exposed. That was amazing. That was great. So yeah, definitely scared though, I would say.
So are you seeing the virus tapering off, or is it still about the same? What are you seeing?
I saw it tapering off. So the unit that I was on was all COVID. My last 2 weeks I had it to the unit was COVID and COVID patients. Because family concerned who was not COVID positive, catching COVID, but they made it so that the nurses would not cross over. So if you had no COVID patients, that's all you had. You didn't have some and then, a COVID and a non-COVID. But as the days went on, I came back the following week and we had no COVID patients on the unit. So the unit went from a full unit of COVID patients to none.
Tammy, do you still have your earbuds in?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
I can. I think it's just kind of interfering a little bit. See if you could just take them off. Because I think that may just be interfering just a little bit. Okay.
Is this any better now?
It is. I think that's what it was. You were just coming off a lot of static, but that's, yeah.
Okay.
So that last question was...
are you seeing the virus taper off?
Yes. And so my response to that was yes, I am seeing it. I did see it taper off. We started off with a full COVID unit. Then we kind of tapered down to one side of the unit being like a COVID unit. And then the other side was non-COVID patients. And the nurses who worked on the COVID side were not allowed to go on the other side just to prevent like contamination and everything. But then as the days progressed, we ended up being like a non-COVID unit. So that unit no longer had, COVID patients. So that was a good thing. We went from a full COVID unit to all patients that were being admitted now with no COVID at all. No diagnosis of it.
So I'm going to ask you, because we're hearing a lot about nurses and other healthcare frontline workers that were being suspended or fired because they were speaking out about mismanagement of the virus. Did you witness any of that? And what is your take on that as well?
Yes, no, I didn't witness any of that. Englewood was a pretty good hospital. There's like a teaching hospital, so it was really different. The environment was kind of like teamwork. We're going to get it done. We're going to work together. They had a lot of support from like the police department and the fire stations close by. They would come by and like just thank us and just show a lot of love. So my situation at that hospital was very, different compared to what I did see on the news. And that was sometimes with like some of the private hospitals, from what I could tell. Yeah. Some of the private hospitals and nurses were, getting in trouble for kind of bad mouthing, is what they would say, bad mouthing the hospital, like on to the news and things like that. But it wasn't really bad mouthing. It was just our reality, really,
exactly.
it was what we were dealing with. And a lot of times, like, with this whole HIPAA thing, we can't really, talk but so much. But I just wish that a camera crew could just come for a moment and just see a patient that's struggling to breathe and they can't catch their breath and stuff. And I think that would change a perspective on a lot. We are the voices, but they don't want to hear what we have to say because I guess it might be too harsh or too bad, but it's reality of what it is, really.
Did you experience where every day you were walking in and, it was a different policy on the treatment, of the virus? Because it's new. So it's not like these were standing orders. There's no standing orders. Okay, well, if the patient come in with this, then we do that.
Right.
So did you experience every single day change in policy from administration?
No, we didn't experience that. Not too much of a change. It just changed with the way that they wanted us to document. The way that they wanted us to document, it wasn't as intense. They just wanted us to not spend so much time on the computer. They just wanted us to be readily available for our patients. So they just cut our assessments down to all of the things that had to be charted in the computer system. So they shortened that, and then the memo regarding the sterilization of the mask, that was really the only thing. They were pretty much solid and set in stone. And again, I think because it was like a teaching hospital, they were like equivalent to like Emory here in Georgia. So, they're funded by the government. So things were a lot more organized versus some of the private hospitals are some of the ones that kind of struggled with that.
And, we've heard that African Americans have been hit really, really hard with this virus. What's your take, and what were you seeing on the front lines?
I didn't see too many African Americans, but this is my theory, and I think I'll stick with it until I'm no longer here on Earth. But there are when you do statistics and you kind of look, if you just look at the racial statistics on each state, here in all 50 states, they're averaging with African Americans between maybe 20 to 30%, give or take. There are only about 3 states that have like 40s and 50s, 40 or 50% African Americans, which is, I think, is Georgia, Mississippi, and I want to say Louisiana, but it's only 3 of them. So with that being said, since African Americans are majority underpopulated, then our numbers, our percentage numbers will always be higher. And I use this example to say, if you have 100 African Americans in a room, and let's say you have 200 Caucasians on another side of a room. If you have 30 people out of the African American group, out of that 100 people, you have 30 people that have COVID. If you do the percentage in the math, that's 30%. If you have 200 Caucasians in a room, and let's say 50 of those 200 have COVID, even though it's 50 and that 50 is more than 30, they're only 25%. Only 25% of that. That's what the percentage will come out to be, 25%. So the 30% is actually higher because there's less of us. The 30% is higher than the 25%, but there's more Caucasians and there's more cases. But because there's less of us, our numbers will always be like, oh, African Americans, they're 40%. But you might have there's only 20% of Caucasians, but how many Caucasians are you counting? How many cases if you take the percentage out? So that's my take on it. And that's numbers. I mean, you can do the math yourself. That's numbers, that's facts, that's statistical facts. If you look at the racial statistics on states, this isn't made up. This is just facts. But because they put that percentage on it, African Americans will always be like at a high percentage rate because there's
minority. We're minority. Got it.
Right.
How concerned are you with states reopening? Do you feel that we're like at that tipping point to where it's safe to go back out? There's going to be some cases, but they're going to be minimal, or do you feel that this could reignite this flame and we could start this cycle all over again?
Right. I'm in Georgia. So I'm one of the states that, opened up first. There's a couple of ways I looked at it. When I first saw it, I was like, oh my God, why are they doing this? But then when you really look at it, COVID isn't going anywhere. And this is going to be kind of sort of like our new norm. This is wearing the mask and protecting ourselves more. It's just kind of going to be the new norm. So I feel kind of two ways about that. I felt that, yes, right now it may be too early to open up, but then also it's going to be our new norm, and we can't fight it. So people just have to use kind of like their common sense. Don't go out to these bars and things, not yet. But you don't have to feel like you're trapped at home either. So it's a couple of ways to look at that. I try to look at it on a positive note. So if we have to wear the mask, we just have to wear them, and just use precaution and do things the right way. As far as seeing it happening again, with knowing how viruses live on surfaces, they can't withstand a lot of heat. And some of our southern states, we get pretty hot here. So I think that it will taper off as we start to maintain that 75, 80, 90 degree weather. I will see the cases probably will really drop off. But what I'm really worrying about is when it starts to get cold again, and it starts that flu season starts to come back around. I don't know, because I don't know if people will get comfortable once they see the numbers start to drop in the summer and kind of get comfortable and forget all about wearing masks and hand washing, and then we're back to square one again. So I would just like to see how it plays out. It's just, like I said, it's hard to even predict right now because no one really even knows, has solid answers for this whole situation.
So as far as the coronavirus is concerned, statistically, in comparison to the regular flu, you see some data saying that, the regular flu actually had more deaths in previous years than coronavirus. So why all the hype? What's your take on that?
Right. They say that the flu has had more deaths than the coronavirus, but I think the hype came from, people with the flu. You can live with the flu. You're going to be down for a little while, but after about a week or so, you're back. And I think what the hype was with this whole coronavirus as to how fast, you go from normal to critical. And, with the flu, you can get bad, but not being able to breathe, and how it was really wiping people away. It was, so fast. I think that's where maybe the hype came in from. And then the fact of no one really knows how to treat this. With the flu, we can get some Tamiflu. You can go to the drugstore and get some over-the-counter stuff. But this COVID, nothing over-the-counter is going to stop pneumonia, So I think that's where the hype came from, because no one really knows. Everyone's scared.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that Fauci and Gates, their predictive model played a role in this, where they were predicting all the deaths and cases? How big of a role do you feel that played in the hype?
I think it played a part. I would say, yeah.
What's your opinion on vaccination? If there's a vaccine for COVID-19, are you for it?
No, absolutely not. I'm not for it, and this is my reasoning. As healthcare providers, when you receive a vaccine of any sort, you're getting a very small strand of the particular virus, so that your body can build antibodies and learn how to fight it. But they don't even have a solid treatment in place for this COVID. So it affects everyone differently, of course. And, everyone really has that symptom of not being able to breathe. I don't want to take a risk of, you injecting this live virus, even though it's a small amount, in my body, and my body reacts to it. And then I don't even have a treatment in place that can help cure me for it. It's just not enough. It's not enough data. It's not enough stuff out there yet that I would feel comfortable taking the vaccine.
Right. And even being a nurse, injecting the vaccine to someone and somebody going into respiratory distress within 20 minutes is okay, no. There's just too many things.
Right. What are we going to do?
Yeah, there's too many things that have to be worked out that I'm trying to understand how this is going to be developed in 12 to 18 months. But let me ask you this. Where are we in healthcare? Where are we moving from this COVID-19? where do you feel healthcare needs help? Like, what's to come, in your opinion?
Mm, that's a good question. That I, how can I answer that? I don't know. I don't know where healthcare has changed a lot over the years that I've played a part in it. And it's just I don't know. I don't know where we're headed. There are a lot of nurses that are just, they're scared. Some are not, some are okay. Some are saying that they want to get in another career and like go into education versus working in the hospital. I do maybe see a lot of nurses, possibly coming out of the
Yeah,
hospitals.
they
A lot of the
yeah,
older nurses coming out of the hospitals, maybe doing, maybe more home health or, you know, information technology stuff on the healthcare side. But I do see that, there was always a shortage in hospital nursing, even back when I was in school. So I think the shortage is gonna continue. But yeah, as far as where we're headed, I just don't know. It's just not the same anymore, though. I definitely can say that.
yeah.
Let me ask another question here in reference to, you hear a lot of things floating around on social media that hospitals and doctors were paid X amount of dollars to state that a person died from COVID when in actuality it may have been a heart attack or it may have been cancer related. Have you seen that, or what's your take on it?
Yeah, I haven't seen that where the doctor was paid to say that, but this is what I do know. You have COVID, you have this virus, and this virus does different things to the body. And it's either the patients died from pneumonia or they died from having a heart attack. And mostly what I saw was it was like a mixture of both. And here's why. Because when you have COVID, of course, it fills your lungs up. Your lungs start to kind of attack themselves, fill up with fluid, you can't breathe. So when a person like can't breathe on their own and they have this pneumonia, their heart rate will go up. And I saw me working on a telemetry unit. I saw lots of high heart rates. I mean, sometimes they even go up into 200s. And this was because they just were having such a hard time of breathing. And this is how their body reacted to
Mm-hmm.
it. So they would go into cardiac arrest. There were a lot of, the lab work that shows like the different cardiac functions, a lot of elevated everything. And some people had like slight strokes. I mean, it was a lot of cardiac. And it was also to where these people had pneumonia and they practically were drowning in their own fluid in their lungs, and they died from just complications of not being able to breathe. So it was a mixture of both. And that's COVID. What COVID enters your body, it causes your body to do weird things. And, this is just the response of it. Either you go into cardiac arrest because your body can't handle not being able to breathe. So your heart rate goes up to compensate, and your heart rate starts beating so fast that, you end up having a stroke, or, you go into cardiac arrest.
Yeah.
So it was a mixture of both.
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, I could only imagine just being in that type of environment because you took on an assignment that's different from your normal environment. So just walk it into that. So, from one nurse to another, I just want to commend you
Exactly.
on doing that. That's very heroic. And
Thank you.
it's amazing. It's amazing. And it's good to have good nurses out there because, in every industry you have some rotten apples, So
Yeah,
yeah, I
exactly.
just really want to commend you for doing that, leaving your family to go take care of somebody else's family, not knowing if you were going to come back to your own family. So, and
Right.
that's what's important. And as a frontline worker, and you have family that's sick, is one nurse. It is literally one nurse to sick patients, and you're having to do everything for that nurse. You're having to deal with the doctors, the family, everybody. So, typically nurses are very good at handling stress. They work great under pressure. But I could only imagine that this was something you just weren't trained for, just weren't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I felt like a new nurse. I definitely wasn't trained for it. Yeah, that's how I felt.
Yeah. What is your take on social distancing? Do you feel like this is helpful? Like, do you feel like it is causing more harm than good on the psyche, on depression, on people that are home alone? What is your take on that?
Yeah, the depression, I've heard that word a lot during this time with the whole, being in the house and isolating yourself. Um, yeah, people do say that they are depressed, and it was kind of it was kind of depressing for me too, going
Yeah.
through all of that stress, working in the hospital, because normally you come home to your family, and they help just take your mind off of everything, but I was going back to a hotel room just by
Yeah.
myself, and that was like the first week was really, that was like the really roughest part of it. But yes, it will. It can drive someone crazy. Just not, it's the small things that we take for granted, that you just don't realize that, oh my God, now that you're not able to do, how much it really helped you. Just going to work and being amongst other people and talking to people, even though they may get on your nerves, you might not like that coworker. But now that, some people who can't work now, can't go to work, they'll do anything. My kids used to complain about, I gotta go to school today, mom. My kids now wish they could go to school. I just wish I could go to school. I miss my friends. I miss this. And I was like, you guys just complained about it the whole school year. But it's the small things. And yeah, and it does play a role. And I see a lot of people that, it affects those who don't have family, or,
Yeah.
who don't have, a lot going on. My heart goes out to the individuals, because it's a rough time. This whole social distancing thing, it's rough. It's rough. It's new. Everybody said this is our new norm now, but it's surely an adjustment. I mean, yeah, for everyone.
So with that said, how do you feel that it has affected you? Like, what's the silver lining in this? Most of us have gone through isolation. We've had to contemplate a lot of things, go into deep thought. What do you feel that
Mhm.
you've gotten out of all this?
I definitely had some time to reflect, on myself. And I had to start shifting and looking at all of the positive things, even though it may not seem like a lot, I'm still
Mhm.
alive. I still have my family, I still have my home, and, things. So I had to start taking an account for all of the small things that were still good, because it's not all bad. Some people are worse off, than I am. But I'm blessed enough to, still be able to, feed my family and have a job, even though I have to work. I have to go on the battlefield and work in COVID all
Yeah.
day. But, I'm fortunate enough to have it. So I just had to kind of shift my way of thinking. And it is definitely like, just help me not take the small things, for granted. The smallest little things that used to bring excitement, I don't take it for granted anymore. I try not to complain about much. I barely complain about anything now, because I think this is the worst of the worst that I've ever been through, like all at one time. I've been through things, but this is just another level. Like the whole world is like closed. The whole world is shut down, and it's
It's
different.
affected
Oh my God, it's
everyone. It's
different.
not just like one or two people. It's like the whole world. The whole world has been affected.
Yeah, and as a nurse, you want to save people, you want to
Yeah.
help, but and like now you gotta help yourself almost. I had to be a little
Yeah.
selfish, like, okay, I gotta get my mental together,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's rough. It's rough,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but
It's just
yeah,
like on an airplane. They tell you, you have to, drop that oxygen mask, take care of yourself before you can help anybody else. So
That's true.
right, and that's really true. Yeah, I found that to be very accurate during my stay, during this assignment. So yeah,
Tammy, we have a few more
I
questions
agree.
and then we'll wrap it up. What can you say to our listeners about keeping their immune system up, staying healthy right now in the midst of this COVID era? What can you tell them as a frontline worker how to stay out the hospital, how to stay at home and take care of themselves? What can you share?
Yeah, well. the biggest thing is the hand hygiene and keeping your face covered. So everyone, I guess now some people are getting the picture, but everyone thought that they had to have like a medical mask to go outside. But, you can cover your face with, with some of the masks that there people are selling and getting creative at home and sewing, or, you can purchase that, or just, use a handkerchief or something and cover your face, and always, keep your hands washed and carry sanitizer with you. And I know I'm guilty of it. I was guilty of it. And I know a lot of my friends, they kind of related to me. But, like when we go out and we get food, we might run in the store or something, get gas, and might grab a pack of crackers or whatever. A lot of us before this COVID stuff, we didn't wash our hands. There's no sink. You would just get in the car and just kind of open up your crackers. So if you go through the drive-through and order some nice hot French fries, we would get our bag of French fries and we would just go in the bag and taste it. We haven't washed our hands. That was just the norm. But now it's that small stuff like that, carry a sanitizer, because before you touch those French fries, put some sanitizer on if you have to have it, if you have to eat it while you're on the go, or if you just have to eat that pack of crackers you just bought, like sanitize yourself, and just kind of be very careful with, with what, how close you are to people and things you touch and things like that. It's just the small, simple things. There's a whole nother conversation, but those are just some of the small things that that I took for granted. I was that one that would go to the drive-through and try to eat a little bit of my food while I'm driving to, back to work for my break or whatever the case may be. But we can't do that anymore. We have to be more, alert and in tune with washing our hands and sanitizing.
Yeah. Do you think healthcare providers are pivotal at this moment in overcoming this COVID era?
No. I don't think we'll ever overcome it, because I don't think COVID is going anywhere. But I will say we will get to a better place than where we are now. And I felt that I felt hope when I saw that my unit went from all COVID patients to no COVID patients. And there were still COVID patients throughout the hospital, but now we're down to one unit that doesn't have any COVID patients. Even though it doesn't sound like a lot, but that's major, because okay, that's kind of proof that, people are getting better. This virus is kind of, dying down a little bit. But will it be here to stay? Yeah. Do I think we're fully overcoming and say, yeah, we've gotten over it? No, because I think it'll always be here. But definitely, to get a grasp of it and feel like that we can be on top of it and maintain it, and instead of going back to where we were with everyone shut down and nothing being open. I think we'll overcome that part of it soon, but no one really knows how soon.
Do you believe the numbers here in Georgia are accurate? Like after the first week of reopening, they were showing that there were a lot more cases as well as deaths. Do you feel that's accurate or media hype?
That it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to say. I haven't worked in the Georgia. I've been gone, so I haven't worked in the Georgia hospital settings to see how their trends have been. The hospitalization trends have been going. But do I think that they have been more cases? I honestly say yes, because some people here a lot of people didn't believe that this COVID even existed. There are people that think that this is just a government fluke, it's made up. There's no coronavirus killing people. I never doubted it, but it really put my mind at a different perspective when I got to New Jersey and I saw what it was doing to people. I was like, oh no, this is no joke. This is serious. So the numbers here, will I say that they would probably be accurate? I would say yes, because I would say yes. And this is another reason why I say yes too. I came home just for a couple of days after my first couple of weeks on my assignment. I had a string of days off. So I was able to fly in for a day and fly out and then come back home. And the flight was filled to its capacity, leaving New Jersey, coming to Georgia. People were coming to see family members. Mind you, this is the highest, that was the county, well, not North, but I was in Bergen County, but that was, the area that was next to New York that had a ton of cases. And you had these same people that were flying, trying to get away from it, that were flying here. not knowing if they were asymptomatic, if they had it, and you have full flights of people still traveling. That's the stuff that wasn't on the news. I couldn't believe the flight was filled to the capacity. I thought I would maybe see a few healthcare workers just flying back home. These were families, children, no mask, flying on the plane coming to Atlanta, Georgia, because they had families here.
That's interesting.
So that's the movement that I think, had kind of brought a lot of the cases. And then when people found out that Georgia was open, you have people from all over the world that want to come here and probably vacate. They may have some money saved up and just come here and do things because they're on lockdown at home. So the airlines never shut down. So that allowed people to travel, and so, I do think those numbers were possibly somewhat accurate. If they were Georgia residents, I doubt it. Maybe not, but if I think that they were accurate, absolutely.
Good insight.
All right, Tammy. So at this time, at this moment of this podcast, what would you say is the matter of your heart? It could be COVID related or not. Just right now, as we're speaking, what is a big concern of your heart right now?
Just that D word, depression. I hear it a lot. I see it, even younger kids, are dealing with feeling feeling sad or not feeling normal because they don't even, interact with kids and stuff. Everyone's on this lockdown and stuff. So, I was just, that's what's really on my heart. I just pray for a lot of people, and I just, hope that people just can make it through. It's only temporary. It's not forever. And we'll get through it. And I encourage people to just utilize their technology as much as possible. If it's just FaceTiming a friend when they feel down, even though we're on this quarantine, we're not locked in our homes. Take a walk, get some sunshine, do some small things just to help take your mind off of things that you're dealing with, because it's not going anywhere. You just kind of have to learn how to deal with the situation that we're in, because we can't make it go away. So you have to kind of reconform your thinking of, okay, let's think positive. What are some things I can do? So it's ways to get around it. But the depression thing is really, I read a lot of posts, and my heart goes out to a lot of people.
We got to keep people prayed up and check on people. And I heard someone say it's not social distancing, it's physical distancing, because social, we could do that. We have so much technology now for us to still be socializing.
Absolutely.
And
I agree.
What is one book you can recommend to our listeners? COVID related?
Okay. I have a book. It's not COVID related, but it's a book that I'm a co-author of. Myself and 12 other women had collaborated a couple years ago, and we shot a small documentary and, wrote a book. And it was just, the book is titled Women Unveiled. And it's a book where every woman shares like a very horrific point in their life and a turning point where they kind of came from that hard time, and how they, arose from all of the negativity, and they were able to, continue pushing through life. And it was stories from, from people's childhood to abuse, to a young lady that was in med school, African-American young lady that was in not med school, I'm sorry. She was in law school, and she went through a whole lot, but she ended up coming out a lawyer, so there's small things. And even though it's not COVID related, it just gives people hope that no matter like what your situation is, you can always come out a winner. If you can just continue to pray and keep your mindset, in a positive state, you can come out a winner for sure.
And where can our listeners find the book?
You can find the book on Amazon, and also let me see, I'm not sure if that website is open, but I'll leave my email. If anyone is interested and wanted to purchase an autographed copy, my email is trowe22@hotmail.com. It's really simple. I'll say it again: T as in Tammy, Rowe, ROWE, the number 22 at hotmail.com, and I will provide that information to those because I don't have it right offhand. I apologize for that, but I'll provide the information to if anyone emails and they're interested in the book. Definitely.
Good stuff, Tammy.
Very good.
Did you have anything else, Russell?
That is it, other than just to say thank you for your time and joining the podcast, and thank you for your hard frontline work that you're doing out there. Is very commendable. And
thank you so much. I
appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to hearing more about your future success with your book and your career.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you all. I'm glad that this is, something that can get out to other listeners and get out to people, because sometimes the news will just frighten people, but there's hope on the other side.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Yeah.
Awesome. So this has been another episode of Matters of the Heart and Soul podcast. We just finished speaking with Miss Tammy Rowe. She was a frontline healthcare provider. She was assigned New Jersey. So she just kind of walked us through her experience while she was out there. Matters of the Heart and Soul podcast is inspired by love, God, relationships, spirituality, justice, culture, family, children, finances, freedom, personal growth, energy and vibrations, universal principles, health, education, masculine and feminine energy, music, and just all things of the heart and soul. So we appreciate your support. Please share this podcast. Our mission is to connect our hearts with our minds, especially during this COVID era. I think we're in a mass awakening, and I think it is a good way for us all to stay connected and to raise our vibrations into love. Stay tuned for our next episode. Thank you so much, Tammy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye-bye.